As a real estate agent, I've had people asking me about the proposed President Biden $15,000 homebuyer tax credit, asking what it is, whether they should wait for it to buy, and what kind of impact it may have on the housing market. Living in the real estate market every day, I certainly have some things to say about the tax credit and what you might want to know if you're a buyer looking to take advantage of it. So that's what I wanted to share with you in today's video. Let's get into it. What's good, everybody? If you're new to my channel, my name is Parker Gray and I'm a real estate agent here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. As previously mentioned, I'm just going to be discussing some of my thoughts here on the Biden $15,000 tax credit and what it may mean for both home buyers and the housing market as a whole. Before I do, please consider subscribing to get more real estate information in the future and tap the notification bell so you can be notified when I come out with new videos. So first of all, in case you don't know what a tax credit even is, it's basically a dollar for dollar reduction in your income taxes. Enter the Biden tax credit, which was proposed way back when the pandemic started by his campaign as an effort to stimulate the economy and aid prospective first-time homebuyers hardest hit by the pandemic. And if you were around and remember, back in 2008, the precedent for such a tax credit was set with the Bush-Obama first-time homebuyer tax credit that was implemented after the Great Recession to re-stimulate the crushed housing market. However, this Biden tax credit is actually quite a bit different in practice and in the surrounding circumstances. For starters, unlike 2008, from what we know so far, the Biden tax credit would actually be applicable towards your down payment and/or closing costs. So you wouldn't have to wait to get that tax credit during tax season. Rather, potentially use it directly to subsidize or cover your down payment and/or closing costs up front, which is really a huge difference. I can only imagine there are many people who would love to take advantage of the credit, but wouldn't be able to do so if they had to wait for it to be applied towards their taxes because they just couldn't cover the upfront down payment and closing costs. So obviously that's a very exciting and enticing prospect for many of those of you who are looking to buy your first home, and why so many people are asking about this tax credit. Now, as far as the economy and markets are concerned, this is where discussions on the Biden tax credit kind of go off in different directions. In 2008, the need to prop up the housing market was desperate as people were losing their homes in foreclosures, short sales were through the roof, home prices plummeted, and the market completely tanked, which is actually kind of the opposite of what is happening right now, which sort of prefaces what I have to say about the implementation of the Biden tax credit. Now, before I get into that though, I ought to point out that as far as I guess the tangible elements of the Biden tax credit, we really don't know that much besides the $15,000 maximum amount of the credit and the fact that it could be applied up front, as the details are pretty sparse. We don't know how the amount of the credit will be prorated or whether it will be forgivable or have to be repaid at some point in the future. And it's important to note there's no guarantee this will even be introduced as a bill or be passed at all. But even without a whole lot of details on the proposal yet, given the nature of the market that I live in every day as an agent, I do certainly have some thoughts on the tax credit that first-time homebuyers should take into consideration. So, like I mentioned, the circumstances are very different now than back in 2008, as the demand in the housing market is incredibly strong. In fact, it's all too strong to the point where the housing bubble bursting is a daily discussion among economists and housing experts, and you can find hundreds of articles talking about it. This is primarily because there is so much demand for housing right now, coupled with historically low housing inventory, pretty much matching the lowest supply levels over the last 75 years. And with just a basic understanding of economics, when you have a high demand and a low supply, that leads to an increase in prices, which we have been seeing to a significant extent over the last several years in the United States. Perhaps you're wondering what that has to do with the $15,000 tax credit. And actually, it has a lot to do with it. Look, in theory, of course, a first-time homebuyer tax credit is fantastic for people that may otherwise not be encouraged or capable to get into the housing market, but we have to remember that we don't live in a vacuum, in that the current market circumstances will dictate the effect that such an incentive will have. For me, I try and look at both sides of the coin. Don't get me wrong, of course this helps first-time homebuyers on the surface. particularly those who are cash poor but have sustainable jobs, as this tax credit might provide them the entry into the housing market that they need. But at the same time, with even more buyers rushing into an already overcrowded marketplace, it will make it very difficult for the same buyers to secure homes, since it will likely further cause home prices to skyrocket. And with even tighter competition, it would make it more difficult for presumably low down payment government loan buyers who will make up the bulk of the tax credit recipients to get their offers accepted when facing stiff competition from cash and conventional buyers. As a matter of fact, Lawrence Yun, the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, shared the same sentiment, saying only with added supply will the homebuyer tax credit be effective in boosting home ownership and enlarging the middle class. Without supply, home prices jump much higher with no meaningful gain to new home ownership. And Mr. Yun really brings up the crux of the issue here that I think many people just don't want to say out loud in fear of seeming against something that is such an egalitarian measure aimed at growing the middle class. And that is that there just really isn't a need for stimulating demand right now. Believe me, I've been working with enough buyers who have lost out on enough multiple offer situations to know. More importantly, further stimulating demand may be one of the vehicles for causing the housing market to hit a wall and enter a premature retraction period in housing prices or a crash in the absolute worst case scenario. If anything, as Mr. Yun said, we need to figure out how to stimulate the supply of homes in some way to even out the housing market and allow meaningful entry for the buyers who would benefit most from such a tax credit. Naturally, if we just create more strain on the housing market and artificially drive up prices even more, that will price many people out of the housing market that this tax credit is supposed to help. And just to be clear, the Biden administration does have in their housing plan to take action strategically to increase supply over the next 10 years. But unfortunately, even if that agenda were to come to fruition, it wouldn't happen nearly as rapidly as demand would surge if the first-time buyer tax credit gets passed and signed into law. Honestly, I really don't want to rain on the parade of the people who are just waiting and hoping for this first-time homebuyer tax credit. And it may very well wind up being a good thing and pan out differently that some of us in the industry might expect, especially as more details are laid out. And I'm not an economist, so there are other extraneous factors that are beyond me that play into all of this. But I am an active participant in the real estate industry, so I hope that experience would give me some good insight anyway. But heck, even the economists get it wrong most of the time, and none of us truly know what the future will hold. So really, the best advice you can follow is this. If you're a first-time home buyer, don't simply wait on this tax credit to purchase a home just for the sake of it. If you're capable of buying, you might as well go for it while rates are still low and you're ready to start building equity. If you're not quite ready and the tax credit rolls around when you are and you can utilize it, great. But don't get swept up in the idea that a tax credit is going to be just the thing you need to be able to become a homeowner. Chances are, if you're thinking that way, you aren't really in a financial position to comfortably afford a home yet, and you're better off just getting there first and worrying about whatever programs might be available later. It's okay. Trust me, you'll be better off in the long run with that kind of mentality. To end on a positive note, I just want to encourage those of you that are looking to buy your first home and we're really relying on this tax credit to not be disappointed or lose hope. Keep saving, keep building up that credit if necessary, and don't give up on it just because the Biden tax credit might not be the saving grace you thought it would be. As an agent, there is no greater joy than helping first-time home buyers, because if there is one thing that is inextricably linked to a sustainable financial future, it is home ownership. Study after study, time and time again, proves that to be the reality. I want nothing more than to see more and more people build that through homeownership, so just keep plugging away and wait for the right timing regardless. Of course, if I can be a resource to help you make that dream come true, you can always reach out to me, leave me a comment with questions, or come to me directly if you're looking to buy a house in Southwest Michigan. Otherwise, I'd be happy to refer you to someone reputable and interested in helping first-time homebuyers wherever you may be. If you're looking for more informational content that is helpful for first-time buyers, consider checking out some of my other videos, such as this one about the very popular first-time homebuyer FHA loan program. Please leave a like on the video if you found it helpful, and go ahead and subscribe if you want to see more from me in the future, and follow me over on social media as well if you'd like to keep up with my world of real estate. I'd love for you to join me. Thanks again for watching, take care, and make it a great day.